hear me okay?
One of the IT guys let me borrow it. Hey,
Thank you.
Yeah, I went and borrowed something. Yeah, when did
Hear me okay?
I can just see you now.
Hey, Eric, you were in public, can you hear me?
That's exactly what I did. And he was super nice too. He gave me cord, he gave me a plug.
For a day.
She's picking on me about it. She's like, I think Lisa went over there. And I said, well, I didn't take it because I do not.
Oh, great. Okay, wonderful. So I can do a quick audio test.
Thank you. And likewise.
And then Wendy, can you hear me? Are you able to read the audio test? That would be great.
Yeah, we can hear you. How about on our side?
Coming through beautifully. I'm just letting these folks get a very quick stretch break. Do you mind if we can talk about 2 minutes?
So the wife's not gonna.
Thank you so much for taking the time. We're so grateful that you're here.
Yeah.
And I'm
Thank you.
For the state.
Anya, since you're gonna do more of the PowerPoint, do you want to try to pull that up now while they're getting ready and see? Sometimes it jumps into the, we want to make sure the views look working the right way.
Yes. Let me try that now.
I think it's in that present. Yeah, there you go.
Great.
Hopefully that's working the right way.
All right, that looks good on our end. Your audio is coming from Godly, so Jesse from the Institute team is going to introduce you. If you give us 1 minute, we'll get the team back in. But thank you guys again for your time today.
Thank you.
Rated as a 1-to-1.
All right, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up
That's
Jesse
cute.
from the Institute team to introduce you. Wendy, thank you again so much for being here. We're really excited to hear what you have to share with the group.
Yeah, that was.
No idea where the mic is in this room, so I'll just talk loudly.
Oh, there, you know.
So in planning the last session, before Julie made her transition to Averett, she wanted to ask VOEE, the Virginia Office of Education Economics, if they would present with us. So I know during our presentation this morning, thanks to myself, Julie, Linda being on some of the team, we use Jobs EQ data for some of our presentations. But VOEE is a resource that we like all of you to be aware of, that you can and should hopefully engage with. So the Virginia Office of Education Economics was created in 2021 by state legislation. And kind of the line I went with from the website was their goal is to be your source for data on Virginia's talent pipeline, which is obviously very important to all of us in this room. So today we have Wendy Kang, who's the new executive director of VOEE, and Anya, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your last name, Anya Upadhyaya, who's a research and data analyst with VOEE. And so I'm going to kick it over to the experts.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Jesse, for introducing us. And I think you've summed up one of the things that we would just talk about a little bit in terms of VOEE and who we are. I'm going to just kick things off. Anya really does know a lot more about the data and dashboards. As Jesse mentioned, I am in week 3 in this position, but have been in Virginia for 25 years. I was actually originally involved with the development of the Virginia Office of Education Economics, having worked in higher ed and workforce in Virginia for many years, and recognizing that there was really a need to have an entity that could help translate data, labor market and workforce data and training data to help better guide the state and regions across Virginia in talent development. So I'm really excited to be here and show what VOEE has done so far, but prior to my arrival. And then I'll talk a little bit about a few things that we're going to be doing next. And then Anya will show you the dashboards we have so far. I think one thing that would be a takeaway for us is, we're still in development. So one thing we want to do is get feedback from you all in terms of what could be most helpful. So, either at the end today with questions or as follow-up, that's something that we're going to be interested in learning more about in the next few months as we kind of look at our strategies moving forward. So Anya, if you want to go to our next slide. As I mentioned, we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing and who we are as VOEE. You can see our mission here and what we were developed. And I mentioned a few of the background of what VOEE is and what it does. And the organization really was developed during the 2021 legislation and really got started in, I think, about 22 in terms of developing kind of a mission and what it should be doing. And I would say we're still in kind of what that growth phase could look like. So moving to the next slide. In terms of what we're working on right now, there's 6 work streams that are taking place. We have been assigned several tasks in the code and the budget to be doing. And actually, I will be jumping off a little bit early off of this call because one of the newer tasks that we have is something called the VTOP, which IALR has been involved in with the statewide internship program. I've always been asked to look at performance and measurement tracking for that program. In addition, we've been asked to look at demand and alignment with the G3 program and being able to identify high demand occupations, as well as with the Workforce Credential Grant, what you may know of as the Fast Forward program, and really identifying where those demand occupations are and what programs align to that. In addition, some of the work that we're doing is developing dashboards that are more publicly facing. As you mentioned earlier, you have some jobs EQ data that you were looking at this morning, but there's some things that we have publicly available that we'll walk you through as tools that you could use. And then, of course, we're available to answer more questions after. And then there's some other activities that we've been working on and looking at specific data analyses and requests, and we're trying to learn more about different careers. And as part of VEDP's goal to be the top state for talent, what can we learn in terms of where talent is and where it's going, and what are the trends that we're seeing? So again, this is just some broad overview of the work that we're trying to look at over the next year. Next slide. So in terms of dashboards, I'm going to have Anya now talk about some key dashboards and provide some data based on that. And she really does know a lot more about that. But one of the things we want to do is give you these as links and try to identify what each can serve as sort of a purpose. And then she'll also do a live demo for you of some of those, two of the select ones I believe we chose to show you what they can do. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Anya. And again, if you see me kind of slide off, I'm going to be switching back over to our internship discussion that we're having here that Julie is also a part of. But Anya is very knowledgeable of all these dashboards and will be happy to answer some questions. So we're really happy to be here. Thank you for having us today. And I'll turn it over to Anya.
Great. Hi, everyone, and good morning. My name is Anya Upadhyaya, and I'm a research and data analyst here at VOEE. So I'm going to show you two of our dashboards today. One of them is this dashboard right here, the Virginia High Demand Occupations Dashboard, which essentially visualizes workforce data relating to the high demand occupation list that VOEE created in 2024. And I'm also going to show you the Virginia Education and Workforce Alignment Dashboard, which basically just puts together multiple different data sources relating to workforce and then education and training. But before we do that, I will also give you a brief overview of our other dashboards. So also on our website, we have the Job Posting Analytics Dashboard, which is going to visualize trends in job postings data over the past 12 months. So you can look into things like what skills employers are asking for and what industries are hiring the most in a specific region. We also have the post-secondary program completion dashboard, which will just detail educational production in different regions and by degrees of study. We have the Virginia College and Career Outcomes Explorer dashboard, which is going to sort of visualize the real, education and career pathways of over 650,000 Virginians over the past decade or so. And then finally, we have the program to skills mapping dashboard, which is just going to outline the different skills that are associated with both non-credit and academic programs offered in Virginia. So with all of those dashboards covered, by the way, we do have links to them here to view them on our website. Now I'm going to give you all a live demonstration of our high demand occupations dashboard. So we'll have that load up here. And this takes you right to our website. And we'll have the dashboard load. So again, this is our high demand occupations dashboard, which visualizes workforce and labor market data relating to high demand occupations. And an occupation was deemed high demand by VOEE in 2024 based on whether or not it met a specific set of criteria, which you can read here. So for example, an occupation would have had to have positive job openings forecasted over the next 5 years. And we also looked for jobs that had a minimum median annual wage of about $30,000. Another thing that we looked for were jobs that had a typical entry-level education of a bachelor's degree or below. And the reason that we did this was because we wanted to really highlight and focus on those occupations that are aligned with short-term and medium-term length education credentials.
And Anya, one thing I want to note here, you're seeing the 2024 high demand dashboard, and VOEE did put that together. It was approved by the Virginia Board for Workforce Development. And just as a note, we are in the process of updating that based on some of the board's feedback. And so there will be a new list forthcoming. I think in the fall that'll be coming out.
Yes, and I will touch on some of those differences that our new list is going to have as I walk through it for you all. And so another way that an occupation could have been deemed high demand was whether or not it had registered apprenticeships associated with it in the state. So if we scroll down here, you can see the majority of the dashboard. You're going to have your high demand occupations. We had 361 total. And then you're going to see some of that workforce and labor market data. But before we get into that, I'm going to show you some of the filtering capabilities that this dashboard has, which makes it truly unique and special. So our first filtering option is the region. So if you click here, we have a few different regional buckets that we can filter by. I'm going to stick with local workforce development areas. And then on the second drop-down menu, we can have as many regions as we want or just one, but to capture sort of the Southern Virginia region and the Go Virginia Region 3, I'm going to choose West Piedmont and South Central. And so we can click apply, and what you'll notice is that down here in the dashboard, we saw a shift. We saw things change because now we're looking at the labor market data specifically for those two regions that we selected. So for example, I'm going to highlight right here, we can look at stalkers and order fillers. This is going to be the workforce in those two regions at the moment. This is going to be the projected annual openings in that region and the specific wage in that region for stalkers and order fillers. One thing to note, however, is that the actual list of high demand occupations isn't going to change depending on what region you select. So for example, we're looking at, Southern Virginia. There aren't going to be occupations that jump on the list or fall off the list depending on whether or not they're high demand in that region. However, that is something that we are going to be featuring in our new list, as Wendy mentioned, which should be, in the final stages of being published soon. So now we'll move on to our career cluster filters. So a career cluster is basically just a group of occupations that are similar in nature. You can see we have quite a few, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to select manufacturing. And we can click apply. And then we can also get a little bit more specific than that if we want to. If you click career pathway, you can see different sections of the manufacturing career cluster, but I'm just going to leave all of these in for now for the purpose of this demonstration. And then another thing we can filter on is the typical entry-level education. So like I mentioned before, the high demand occupation list is only going to have occupations that typically require a bachelor's degree or less than that. So for example, if we wanted to look at anything at an associate's degree level or below, we could select associate's degree, high school diploma or equivalent. We can select no formal education, post-secondary non-degree award, which is, like a certificate or credential. And we can also select some college, but no official degree, and hit apply there. And again, you're going to see some changes down in the dashboard below. So those are the main filtering options that I'll show for you. And then we can jump into looking at the dashboard itself. So right now we're looking at manufacturing careers that are on the high demand list. So for example, I'm going to choose production workers, all others, and highlight that for you all. What we can see is that it's a high demand occupation. The occupation is aligned with educational programs that are eligible for Fast Forward and G3 funding. We can see that it's an STW, skilled technical workers occupation, and that it also has registered apprenticeships associated with the job. And then if we look over to the side, remember, these are going to be the workforce data that particularly relates to that specific region. So we have, a current workforce of 131 employees in this production workers all other category. Over the next 5 years, we're expecting to see 23 openings per year and a growth of 31 new jobs. And another way to view that is by percentage increase. So we can go up here and click that. And so now we can see that it's projected to increase by 23.5%. So just another way to view the data. And the median earnings for this occupation are about $28,000. And so essentially what this dashboard is really great at doing is it allows you to dive into a specific career cluster and identify, what are the high demand jobs within that career cluster. And then after identifying, the different high demand jobs, you can actually look at the workforce and labor market data. So you can kind of see, why is production workers, high demand? Well, it might be because it's projected to increase sharply, or, it might be because the average annual openings are pretty large, or the wages are pretty high for that field. And so there's a lot of opportunities to play around with things depending on what you are interested in, what career cluster or education levels or specific region that you want to look at. So that's our high demand dashboard. And now I'm going to go back. So back on the slide, because I'm sure you all will be able to take a look at this afterwards. I have some screenshots of the common filters that we'll do just for your reference if you want to go back and replicate some of the stuff I did in this demonstration. So we again have more filtering capabilities. And then the final dashboard that I'm going to demonstrate for you guys is the education and workforce alignment dashboard. Go ahead and click that. Great. So this is the Education and Workforce Alignment Dashboard, and it kind of just does exactly what the title suggests it does. It takes, workforce and labor market data, and then it will position it right next to data relating to educational attainment across the state. And essentially what this dashboard can answer, or at least get you thinking about in a very visual way, is, what does a specific workforce look like right now? What is it going to look like in the future? And then in addition, what is the educational production that relates to that specific occupation? And, where are, graduates being produced, and to what degree and what extent, and what are they studying? Right, so on this first tab right here, we're looking at an overview of Virginia's workforce. But again, like the high demand dashboard, we can do some regional filtering. So we click here and we actually have Go Virginia regions available for this dashboard, which I'll go ahead and select. And I'll select region 3. And so you can see now we're looking at just a broad overview of the workforce in the Go Virginia region 3 area. From that, again, we can select a career cluster. So last time I looked at manufacturing, but this time I'm going to look at the health science careers. Again, you can see the data shifts and changes a little bit. And once more, we have that opportunity to get a little more specific with the career pathway. And so I actually am going to select a career pathway here, just because, the health sciences are so broad. So let's say we want to specifically look at the allied health occupations. We can do that. And again, you see a little bit in the shift of the data. So we can drill down further into the workforce data by clicking the second tab right here. What we're going to see, you're going to see those same numbers again, the 5% increase. We can scroll down and we can also kind of look at, what was the historical growth for this selection, and what is it going to look like in the future? So for example, we can look at replacement jobs. So, jobs that people leave, they move away and you have to rehire for those positions. Those are replacement jobs. But we can also see growth in terms of this little section right here, which is job growth. So those are new jobs that didn't exist before, and that were created. If we scroll down, we can get a little bit more specific. So, right now we're looking at health science occupations, specifically the allied health professions, but that's still like kind of a broad category, right? If we look at this table right here, we can actually see the names of the occupations that feed into that broad category. So for example, medical assistants. And then you can see, very similar to the high demand dashboard, what does the workforce look like now? What is it projected to look like? And what are the earnings? Now switching over to the educational side, we can go to our third tab here, and this is going to, tell us a little bit about the educational production in programs that are aligned to the allied health careers. So again, we still have all of our filters in place. We don't have to go and refilter them each time we switch, but these are going to be your educational programs that are aligned to the allied health profession. So of course you can see, allied health, diagnostic intervention, and treatment professions is one of the most popular zip codes. And when you hover over it, you can see 81 degrees produced in the region that are related to the allied health occupations. If we scroll down, you can get a little bit more information about where specifically those degree earners are coming from. So you can see Longwood University is producing the majority. And you can see that the majority of the awards are at a level of less than 1 academic year as well. And anytime you click on one of these, you can filter it. So we want to specifically look at allied health master's degree. We can click that right here, and you can see they're all coming from Longwood. But I'll go ahead and unselect that. And if we scroll down now, this is, maybe the key section of this tab of the dashboard. It's going to give you a sort of rough estimate of graduate supply for the allied health professions in our Go Virginia Region 3. So we have 631 people enrolled in allied health programs. 231 awards were actually awarded, in the recent academic year. 82 completions of WCG, and then that gives you, a rough supply of about 313 individuals who could potentially go into the allied health professions. All right, moving on. For some occupations, it can be pretty important to look at the career and technical education completions for that high schoolers are taking. So for example, we can, again, like you see consistently throughout the dashboard, we have historical production in terms of completers, and we have historical data in terms of the actual exams that individuals are taking. And right here, you can see this is like, the most popular CTE exam in the allied health division. We also scroll down to the demographics tab, we can get some pretty interesting information about the workforce. So right here, this is one little section that we like to point out, which is our 10-year age out. That's essentially, the proportion of the workforce in the allied health area in Region 3 that are over 55 years old. And why, of course, it's important to think about that because those are, workers that you're going to have to think about replacing as they retire over the next 10 years. And so you can see based on our specific regional and career cluster filterings, the workforce that's 55 and above is about 18%, which is, slightly higher than the Virginia average of all workers who are 55 and above. And then finally, a lot of information, but still very good information. Finally, we have the earnings tab. And so this tab is going to show you earnings. It's going to show you the graduates from the allied health programs and how much money they're making. It's going to show you the occupational wage data, and then it's also going to show you these like benchmark, self-sufficiency benchmark standards. And so what does all that mean? Let's start from the beginning. So this line right here, you can see on this tab, that's going to show you essentially how much money graduates are making 1 year, 3 year, and 5 years after graduation. And of course, these are graduates from our programs that are aligned with the allied health professions. So you can see allied health professional graduates, made about $26,000 1 year after graduation, which increases to about $36,000 when they were 5 years out of school. We also have these big bars right here, which are going to show you, for example, the median wage of allied health workers. So just another way to compare wages. And then right here, we have these dotted lines, which are pretty interesting. So these dotted lines are going to be what's called self-sufficiency standards. Essentially, if you're just one single adult working in the allied health career pathway, you should be expecting to earn $21,000 in order to be considered self-sufficient. And then you can look at that if you're one adult with a preschool child, or if you have your family is made up of 2 adults with 1 preschool child and 1 infant. And so this is just a great way to view, the different ways that we can measure wages for a specific career cluster or pathway. And, while these self-sufficiency standards may not change that greatly on a county by county basis, we also do have the capability to look at a specific county. So for example, right now we're looking at Olive Go, Virginia Region 3, but maybe I want to look specifically at Amelia County. You'll see on the right-hand side, our data kind of shifts just a little bit to reflect, the cost of living and the wages in that particular region. And so that's the education and workforce alignment data. A lot of information, but hopefully at least gave you an idea of something that you can come back into the dashboard later and play around with or do your own filtering and just take a lot of time to just explore it. That's the best way to learn our dashboards. I'm going to head back to the presentation one more time. Yep, and again, we have the screenshots of, our common filtering options just for you to refer back to. And then so finally, I want to show you some data about production workers. And, I'm not going to go into these data in detail because it's a lot of information, but what I did want to achieve by putting all of these data here was to kind of show you what we at VOEE are able to capture on a more specific and granular level. Because you might have noticed, looking at the dashboards, they're really great, but they're great for looking at kind of from an aggregate perspective. So for example, if you want to look at production workers specifically, one specific occupation, this is an example of data that we can pull at VOEE over here from Lightcast. And so Lightcast is our primary data provider. And we can get a range of metrics relating to the occupations. We can also get a lot of data about the industry. So for example, in Go Virginia Region 3, most production workers are in the rubber product manufacturing industry. We can see, the trend over time. Maybe that's forecasted to decrease, but other industries are forecasted to increase their, proportion of production workers. And then finally, we also have job postings data. So this is also from Lightcast, but what this will show you is that, in June 2025 in Go Virginia Region 3, there were 193 job postings hiring production workers. And so you can see, how many days did the advertisement tend to stay online? What was the median salary that was advertised in these job postings? We can also see what were the top skills that employers were asking for in these postings. So, the top skill that was listed was machine operation. You also see that, the machine operation skill may be projected to lag a little bit in terms of, what a skill, how valuable a skill is by employers, guidelines. But another skill like food safety and sanitation is projected to grow. So these are just, helpful things to keep in mind, and really interesting to look at, especially if you take the job postings data and kind of put it next to the occupational data like this, you can get some really interesting insights. And so, hopefully overall what you took away from this presentation is that VOEE has some pretty great dashboards that you can explore and maybe look at your different areas of interests in a very visual way and, pick up some insights that way. But VOEE also has a lot of data that we can pull at a more granular level, like you can see here in this slide and the previous slide. These are things that we can have conversations with you and pull for you. If you reach out to us, we're able to have those conversations and do our best to kind of address the questions that you most have. And so, speaking on that note, we have our contact information, which I'm sure will be distributed to you all. But yeah, thank you all for listening. And if you have any questions, we may have a few minutes to talk about those, or any final notes from Wendy if you have anything.
No, I know we have a time allotment and want to be cognizant of your time, but it looks like we've got just a few minutes for questions, and happy to answer anything at this time.
I have a very specific question. I am extremely interested in wage benchmarking, and I want to make sure that we as a company are competitive in our specific area with sustainable wages. So there were a couple of things in your presentation that really piqued my interest of being able to get this information. You talked about the self-sufficient, you had that chart up there, the wages for, self-sufficiency, and then also by the next code, and then SOC codes and those types of things, which I'll have. So how do I best access a tutorial that tells me specifically how to get that? Because I really don't have time to explore as much as I would like to with all the different things. So how do I best get that specific access, or access to that specific data?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, heading to the dashboard and looking at that specific earnings tab might be a great way to start, especially because a lot of our information has these quick hover capabilities. So if you have a question, sometimes you're able to hover over a piece of information and, learn more about it. We also have our little about this dashboard to learn more about different components of our dashboards, but also just reaching out to us if you have any specific questions can be a great way.
Yeah, and I would say that as Anya showed, the filters are on each tab. So probably a first quick look is to just go straight to the earnings and select those clusters, because I think when you got to that career pathway level, Anya, it really does have more detailed if you kind of wanted to look at that. But as Anya said, we're also available to try to answer questions, and our contact information is there.
Thank you.
Other questions for Anya and Wendy? I can already think of how this is going to serve as a really great starting point for a lot of the talent pipeline management processes that we suggest. So excited about this tool and to share this with other partners that that are doing this work in Virginia. Really grateful for y'all's time today. I admittedly have a ton of questions, so maybe I can reach out to you guys separately, but we'll definitely be sharing out the links and your contact information with the cohort. Just a huge thank you for the time and your great work. So please join me and thank you.
Thank you all. And as we said, I think we're looking for feedback too and how this can be of help or what other things we can do to help support your work. So feel free to reach back out and look forward to hearing any feedback you have. So thank you to Anya for demonstrating everything and look forward to talking with you more.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.